Wait. Oh, hey, we're live. Hey, happy Friday, everybody. How are you? Oh my gosh, I didn't realize we were live already. Shoot, it might have been that countdown that was waiting for way too long. Hey, how are you?
Tim,
I'm doing good.
Yeah, thank God it's Friday, right? Week full of smoke here, so I've been sitting inside for 3-4 days. But
hey,
welcome.
I gotta bounce. I'll be right back.
All right, we're starting off on a great note today.
Yeah.
Hurry. Happy Friday.
All right, we'll see you back.
Just saw you jump in the green room 30 seconds ago. Do you want to? Oh, he's gone. But
He's gone.
Our special guest this week, Garret Grajek. We're specifically focusing on identity access management, IAM, and a bunch of other acronyms I think we'll talk about in a little bit here. I'm Tim Schnur, Fort Mesa. Our other host, Tim Golden, Team Tim, is falling away from the webinar quickly here. But Jesse, tell our audience a little bit what you do, because I know.
Yeah, I'm Jesse Miller. I'm with Power PSA Consulting, founder and principal consultant, and I help MSPs and information security departments build, repair, and scale cyber offerings effectively. So that's what I do.
Garret, man of the hour. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, Garret, out in California, in one part of the country without wildfires. Imagine that, right? Okay, so I am an identity guy of 25 years, been at the companies like the RSA, and the first SSO product in the world was Integrity. So I was real proud to be an SE there. That led me to build an IAM product from scratch that was SecureAuth, first two-factor IDP. Okay, fantastic. And we can talk about that's traditional IAM, identity and access management. But when I left there and went over to do AI work around identity, I was dragged back in by the identity world to build what the people needed, and a easy deployable identity governance solution. And
all right. So let's rewind here, guys. We're going to jump into that in a second, but
go for it.
Yeah. So we've got an acronym soup here, as I said this week. Identity access, plenty of acronyms. Some are directly related to identity. Some are identity control. Some of them are authentication. So Garret, why don't you jump in quickly and talk about identity access, which I think, frankly, is a relatively new thing, even though you've been in it for a very long time, right? It's getting a lot more attention, but run through some of these acronyms. So. Perfect.
Thanks. And what's they say about a difference between an enthusiast and a fanatic? Can't change the subject. Okay. So guilt is charged. Identity and access management. Y'all think about it as where are the identities stored and how are they enforced? Okay. Fantastic products in this space. Okta, Zero ID, Ping, One Logon, Jump Cloud. That's that space. Identity governance. That's the acronym that at most engineers look and go, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, right? It's actually pretty simple. It's who has access and the hard one. Why? Can you attest to that access? We can get into that more, but that's what identity governance is. Why do you have access, and who's going to take responsibility? That person that has that access. PAM is a subset of access rights. It says, hey, let's focus on the admin accounts, okay? And RBAC is, let me just pause. RBAC is, and I've never heard it said better because I didn't say it. RBAC, and this was the chief solution architect over at CDW, said this at Identiverse last week. RBAC is zero trust. Okay? And I loved it. I look at him and go, you said that? I like that. Basically, it is, guys. You should be organizing your users in virtual clusters called groups or roles, right? And then give them access. Don't give access to users to permissions. Because they leave. Do it in groups. RBAC. Two-factor. Okay. Yeah, I know a little about that. That's created a company called SecureAuth like 10 years ago. Two-factor is, hey, username, password, but hold it. Shouldn't I make the user give a pint of blood or something? Okay. That's your second factor, right? Secure ID was the first one. That was an SC 30 years ago. That single sign-on. Love single sign-on. Love single sign-on. Who has a S2ML shirt? Okay, that's of a company called Integrity, and basically, what single sign-on says is, if I log on one, is there something I can use, a session ticket, etc., to get me over to another app so I don't have to re-sign in? Usually done through web redirects or now through mobile app redirects and identity tokens like SAML, OIDC, etc. Okay?
So Garrett, just password managers, single sign-on, they kind of go together, right?
Yeah. You're purist. Kind of get a little upset when you hear password managers, but right, Jesse? You're right. I'm okay. Yes.
So I'm an MSP. So our audience is MSPs, MSSPs, compliance people. I've got an Active Directory, AD, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, you got Active Directory.
Like cover my bases for identity access, or what do I need?
Active Directory. Let's start there. You got a wonderful thing. You got this great tool, Active Directory. It's syncing you up to Azure AD. Rock and roll. You authenticate to Azure AD. Shouldn't you authenticate strongly there? Right, Jesse, right? You should use type of two-factor. I don't care if it's a push authentication, if it's your nose twitch or whatever, do something for two-factor. What do you get now? You got a session ticket. You got a session ticket that says, I'm G. Grajek. Okay? So then you go from your Outlook.live, right? And you go to Workday, you Concur, Salesforce, right? That can redirect back to your central IDP and keep the session going without having to store a password somewhere in some type of vault that can be hacked and then revealed again. That's the real strength of single sign-on. Yes, single sign-on can be password managers as well, but they have to be managed correctly. Right?
Yeah,
I'll pause. Take it away.
No, I was just gonna kind of dovetail on what you were saying there in terms of single sign-on, because through the years as I've pushed that to clients, we actually developed a SASE ZTNA product at the MSP I was working at in response to the pandemic, really early on, and it was very lucrative for us, as well as helped our clients. But things I heard from clients who were resistant to it, well, isn't that more insecure? Because if they get access to one, they have access to all. And so then you have to talk through, it's actually better than having your password stored in a bunch of disparate systems, and it increases your attack surface by having those passwords in these different environments instead of having it in one. So I wanted to get your take on that a little bit more.
No, I acknowledge that. And isn't that, Jesse, not to get in too early.
Sounds a little bit like distributed blockchain. We're starting to go down that road, right, Jesse? Like, why would I want them all in one place, right? Or I don't know.
But look at that slide you brought up. Right after SSO, you had ZTA.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And that's what Zero Trust is. And that's why it goes back to RBAC, guys. Right? So the right way to do this, in my humble opinion, and many others think that you have a really strong, heuristically based two-factor on your IDP, right?
IDP. Tell the folks what IDP is real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, team. Identity provider. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Identity provider, real generic, almost worthless term, better known now as an IDaaS, identity as a service, right?
Yeah.
Your Azure AD, your Okta, your Ping Federate, your Ping One, your Jump Cloud, whatever, some type of identity in the cloud, right? And then what we do is let's strongly authenticate them there because that's just intelligent. Then pass a secure token over. And this is where Zero Trust comes in. Okay, so I authenticated at this level, but now I'm getting this app. Is that right? Right? Should I, double authenticate them? Should I start looking at what permission sets? Should I be, and this is a yes on this last one, should I make sure I enforce the concepts of RBAC, role-based access control, that say just because I got into this section, if I go here, am I still allowed access? Probably not.
Awesome. Jesse, talk about why it's important, the MSP. So I know we had some materials here. I can pull that up. a lot of news this week, right, with the Verizon breach report.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to get that going here in a sec. But talk to us why it's important to, IT providers, right?
So, yeah, there's a couple different reasons, in my opinion. First is selfishly operational improvements. So when you are using SSO and using a single source of truth, inherently you have less systems to go into, less systems to reset. We're all familiar with the offboarding and onboarding drama that can happen if you forget a password in a certain system. And the more you can integrate to that, the easier and better your life's going to be. And number two, configuration errors. It stops that. So with the operational improvements, you're getting better configuration, more repeatable configuration. So you're not giving admin access to a secretary for some system accidentally, things like that, because you have these nested groups and permissions baked in and then spread across the whole swath of all your applications. So it actually becomes a time saving and both a configuration error saving endeavor when you have it configured properly. So, and there it is, Tim. I think we said, we were looking at this in the green room, is 49, almost half of the breaches in the Verizon ransomware or Verizon breach report were from credential access. So that right there should tell you why you need it.
Going a little deeper on that, like in terms of configurations, why, I guess my mind hasn't gone there in the past. Like, talk about like how it can go bad in terms of identity access and configurations and things like that.
Well, that's a great point. I'd like, and Garrett, you can tell me if you agree with me or not on this, but I think that is where it's important that identity access management and identity governance go hand in hand, and as well as zero trust. So they kind of play in this, they all inform each other. So if you have an IAM provider, but it's just a central store up in the cloud for your credentials, and you don't really have much role-based access control in between that, and you're not checking who has access to what, but you're just using it for an authentication mechanism, it's tantamount to giving admin access to all your end users on their workstations, right? So they can just do great. You have identity access and management, but they can do everything they want. So what's the real point in having it? Just to say that you do.
Let me use a metaphor on you early, Jesse, and see if this hurts your brain. Found out you're a Midwesterner like myself, born and raised Chicago and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So come from serious car people. Not me, I suck at cars, but my brother, my cousins. So this is why I tell people, and I believe this, and I really do, because I invented an IAM, like 10 years ago, I was secure auth, and now I'm doing IGA. I go, the world of IAM is what? It's the engine. It's the engine that drives identity. It's great stuff. I mean, really, I'm very, very impressed with what Okta and Azure AD Ping have all done. It's great. Okay. But to me, it's like the World War II. It's like the cars after World War II, right? They were amazing cars. My goofy brothers would own these things. The 1950s cars and 60s cars with these amazing 300, 400 horsepower engines. Yeah. They can drive. And these things are going. They're using drum brakes on these damn things in the 50s, and they're killing everyone. Right. That to me is IAM and IGA, right? Yeah. IAM is the engine that could. It's like, you need to get access to Workday, rock and roll.
That's it.
You need to get access to rock and roll. You're good.
Yeah.
Okay, where's the brakes, guys? Where's someone saying, okay, we just added everyone to this admin group. We just, gave everyone AWS access. That's what IGA is, y'all. It's that process and the functionality that says, all right, regularly, we're going to review what we've given out, and we're going to review, and this is what's really important, y'all. It's segregation of duties. We're not going to have the IAM directory review, right? Because that's nothing wrong with them, but that's really not his role. We're going to have someone outside of the IAM director look at what those roles and privileges are, and it should be, well, not according to me, but according to NIST, PRAC-1, 4, and 6, basically it should be someone who has identity intelligence of that role and permission, namely the user's manager or the application manager, and say, Bob is no longer in this group. he shouldn't have access to this. Jane has moved on, or Jackson never should have had access to it. That's identity governance. It's more of a practice where the IAMs is a fantastic product to provide the engine that can.
Cool. And so you just talked about that. Why, as you said, zero trust, right person, right time, right amount of access. Talk about this idea of zero trust and like the fact that I have a little picture here of like compartments, right? Sometimes they say silos, right? Like, does that? I'm guessing that probably decreases your attack surface area.
Yeah.
Relevant attack surface.
You want to start with that, Jesse? Then I'll go on top, or how do we want to do this?
Yeah,
Jesse,
no, I could talk through it. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I had a little audio interface issue there. So this might be a polarizing term to some, and Garrett, I didn't ask you if it was for you or not, so we're just going to go ahead and hot with it. So this is kind of where SASE comes in, right? And we didn't throw it up in the acronym soup, but
I like it.
Secure Access Services Edge. So this is a concept, not a product, although there are products that enable it. You'll hear vendors be like, hey, we're going to sell you SASE. Well, that's not exactly how it works.
I've heard SASE. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is all kind of the fabric that brings this all together. So this is a new technology. Think of when we switched the internet almost in terms of identity, right? Identity used to be you had it in your domain controller on site in your local network. Well, then the advent of cloud, the advent of the internet, the advent of SaaS, that required a new identity solution. Okay, that's IAM came up, IAM. All right, so this gives us the engine to identify or to identity and authorize across a wide variety of cloud apps and a standard to be allowed all this inter-sharing of data. Well, with that comes inherent risk. Okay, now we need to give RBAC, govern all of that. That's where the identity governance comes in. But we also need to have contextual, it's more than just static rules. We need to have contextual awareness in our zero trust fabric to understand if a user trying to access something that they might be allowed to is actually correct, or is it anomalous? And so when then you have to bring in AI. Everyone loves saying AI these days, but AI and other sorts of rule-based systems to understand, yes, this user is allowed to access it, but where are they accessing it from? What time are they accessing it? What's the method that they're accessing it from? What's the system? Is this baseline, or is this anomalous behavior? And all those things have to help us protect and provide context around the zero trust, whether allow or not allow. And so that's kind of like the SASE goal, I guess.
Yeah, AI is just if this then that, right? So
yeah.
I love Jesse.
Not too crazy, right? Like as you said, do I need permission this? If then that, right? Like what, as you said, what the context of the ask is. So Garrett, keep going on this. What
No, I love they brought up SASE because I even wrote a white paper for MSPs that's saying why identity, and namely identity governance, is key to SASE for all the reasons Jesse said.
Yeah.
SASE isn't a product. There's no, this is my SASE manager. No, it's the architecture. Do you say I'm going to protect my edge and I'm going to do RBAC, right? And I'm going to do 2FA here, and I'm going to let this roll in here. But if I see anomalous behavior, I'll block them here and that type of stuff, right?
Right.
And that's all based on access control and knowledge of our users. It's basically what we've been doing for 40 years. We used to just have one application and rack F, rock and roll, right? Give it access. But now we have all these components, and SASE is a brilliant enforcement, and that's what I call it, enforcement point of the enterprise. But if it's an enforcement point is not, it doesn't have any concept of who's getting or not. That's you. Right. That's you, the enterprise. You got to start managing who you're giving access to and what level of access management and all that. And that's
so let's pause here and say, if anybody listening's head is swimming because these are new concepts, imagine how your clients feel. So this is why MSPs are needed, and this is why this is such a valuable service. If you can package and come up with a drop-in offering for your clients to give them this in a packaged manner, I mean, that's huge, right? So
No,
We got
that's
some-
that's literally, and Jesse, I'll be sending you over the white paper. I put on SASE and identity because it has to be managed by the MSP.
Right.
Some great comments in here in the chat. You know, right? Like as an IT manager or as an MSP, right? Like how do you what's the lift, right, Jesse? Like what's the labor lift? How much do you have to micromanage this stuff?
Well, that's really the beauty of it, is that you can modularize this. Now, I'm not going to say that there isn't, but that's with any new technology that you're going to offer. There's going to be some initial fact finding and some initial engineering work by your team to come up with a framework that works for you and works for your clients. But for example, okay, I'll give you what we did. So the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden we were kind of working from home all of a sudden, and I'm pretty sure everyone else was getting this as well, but our SOC and NOC was absolutely under a deluge of tickets. I need to get my VPN set up. My VPN's not working. I can't access this. I mean, remote access requests blew us up, basically ground the business to a halt, for lack of a better word. And we were trying to keep our clients afloat as well. So everyone was in panic mode. So I had been talking actually with a ZTNA provider at the time and eyeing that deployment for next year. Well, we accelerated that, and I'm not going to, this isn't a sales call. So I have, there's some accelerated modules that we use to build out an offering quickly for that. And we were able to deploy in the early months of the pandemic, full SASE offering using identity access management, a ZTNA network provider, along with reverse proxy, and then doing governance, and what we haven't talked about yet, device profiling, because of all the BYOD stuff. And so being able to launch that basically saved several of our clients' businesses. And also, I mean, we made good margins on it too, so it was a win-win for everybody. We were able to help our clients with a really great service. And after the pandemic, they were in their remote work world and things were just fine. So
yeah, it's like the Big Bang, right? All of a sudden you're out of the office, out of the network, you're on a BYO device, right? So and clearly we saw this in CIS 7.1 to 8. Data access controls went way up the list in terms of prioritization. So I mean, that's pretty amazing. Like I think we could talk a while about how you actually were able to integrate that like quickly, but also get like the customer buy-in. Carrie, some great comments here, right? You can tell the customer to do that like as much as they want, you want, right? But like, how do you convince them like, oh, I don't have access to everything now, or like, it's you're putting up a lot of fences or a lot of, I guess, like in the ship here, compartment walls, and how do you get that buy-in, and how do you get organization quickly? So.
Well, pragmatically, you take a crawl, walk, run approach to it. So we were talking about application whitelisting last week, right? So you don't just turn on and start blocking everything. You go and
turn the dial slowly.
Turn the dial up, right? That's it,
right?
So I'll give you a pragmatic example. So first things first was to get the ZTNA network provider access and get VPN legs into all the environments, and then get everyone moved over to the new client. Okay. You don't have any real RBAC at that point. There's no zero trust really. You just had them using a new network client to access the VPN the same as they used to. Then the next step was device verification, right? Making sure BYOD devices met certain requirements. Were they patched? Did they have antivirus? If they didn't, maybe they could access some real basic stuff, but they couldn't access sensitive data, and starting to build some of those controls in. And after that, building in device profiling for more sensitive data, and then starting to back off user groups based on what they couldn't access. And so, like you said, turning that dial up. And then final step with one client I'm thinking of here, who's the early adopter of the solution, was to then go to the other side in their Azure environment and harden that and allow only the things through to the certain applications in Azure on the reverse side, using the SASE controls that we built in, and kind of turn the dial up over the course of a year. So that was hugely successful. And again, stopped a ransomware attack actually for mergers and acquisitions. So I think, Garrett, you were talking about that.
That's a great tie-in, because literally a great document to download for the MSPs is Just go to hashtag stop ransomware. Okay, and that's put out by the CISA, FBI, NSA, and other government groups. Just came out last week, and they're doing best practices to stop ransomware. Straight out, what we're talking about here was the MFA, right? Secure remote access, the SASE infrastructure of application firewalls or whatever. But there's one thing we were talking, Jesse, I was listening, and I was saying, okay, because I did some webinars on zero trust and actually two on SASE as well, and I wanted to bring up one reference point for everyone. Palo Alto said, literally in a study they did last year, they did a survey of access controls and cloud entities. And their survey of 1,800 customers came back and said 99% of the surveyed, 99% said that the access permissions were overly permissions for cloud controls.
Sure. Yeah.
So where does that go back to, guys? That goes back to RBAC. Okay. So if we take the time to first start with the identities, and I am an identity-centric person, yes, guilty as charged. But if we start there with the identities and say, these are how I'm organizing my groups and roles, then the webinar I did with a wonderful company called Garret Grajek, got bought by Akamai for ZTNA. I would say he went on all the wonderful technology, the way they were, gating and IP addresses, blah blah blah. And I go, and what it's all based on? Oh, it's all based on your AD groups. Okay, so there you go. Okay,
right.
So I don't care if you're trying to do access controller on your application firewall, your ZTNA, your CASBs, your applications, your remote access, your cloud infrastructure. Let's start with those identities. Know what we actually have. What have we put in there? What are those roles? And that's why, to go back to the Stop Ransomware Guide, it said straight out, one of the key things we had to do, ranked up there with two-factor, is to implement the principle of least privilege. That's the concept that we're only giving access and access right to resources, and everything's a resource, an application, a firewall, whatever it is, it to users who need it. And we're reviewing and removing those privileges accordingly. And once we do that, then when we add a new wonderful piece, one of the many pieces of SASE, it just points back to something like the user ID or the AD group or whatever, and says, okay, this is what gets access because this was what makes sense.
Yep, that's right.
Just
so go ahead, Tim. Oh, wait.
I think it's sharing. I think really this MSP customer conversation, like I think we hone on it every week, right, Jesse? Like,
yeah.
How do you break the ice? How do you start talking about this? Because I think clearly conceptually, most of the listeners understand identity access and like all the tools and how they actually work and function. But how do you start to break that ice and like have that conversation on what's what, right? Like who has admin roles, who does what role in the company, like what data is important, what systems access are necessary. And obviously a lot of MSP owners are like, not used to like having these conversations, I guess. Like I certainly wasn't. I mean, I'm one of them. Like I was a head down analyst for my first 10 years in career, right? Like I didn't have to present my findings too often. I put them in a written report and show them to the market, right? It's how do you, I think you know where I'm going here. So like, how do you have those probing conversations, right? Like that'll allow you to equip and then configure and set things up, and then also turn that dial up accordingly.
Right. Yeah, I think it has to be partly based on business outcomes. So I had success anecdotally not talking about the security of an SSO integration, for example, but rather talking about the workflow savings. So, hey, that last time when a user got onboarded and this got missed, or you know, how we've had some issues with people getting access to this, you know, you need to have some data for that, but saying, hey, we want to put this in place. Oh, and by the way, right, if you're delivering services cohesively, you're going to be having these conversations as a VC. So with the client, this is also going to drop your risk here. So it's stacking benefits. So number one, there's a business and operational benefit, which everyone wants, but then also the ancillary benefit of added security. And then again, final thing is flexibility of the solution. So, hey, you know, we want to be able to give you access to use your iPad from home. We want to be able to give users the ability to work from anywhere. You can add amenities. So we actually, another client we worked out a program with is that putting in this ZTNA work anywhere BYOD solution and letting the client's employees pick the device they wanted to use and giving them a stipend for the device. Well, you just effectively eliminated all your hardware costs for ongoing management for those devices because you're letting them use BYOD. And I'm telling you that $1,200 or even $2,000 a year stipend you give them is going to far below what your internal IT costs are to manage that on a day-to-day basis. Now, to do that, you have to have a rock solid SASE offering and feel confident and not compromise security in the process. So that's where that comes in. So that's a huge win as well.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I think, as you know, we didn't get into this, Garrett, but when did YouAttest start? When did you start the business?
YouAttest started around 3 years ago.
Right,
around 3 years ago.
Nailing that time frame that Jesse just mentioned, right? Like kind of the pandemic. Yeah. I had a quick slide, and you go to an MSP trade show, a conference, and like there's just been this explosion, I think, of new vendors, right? Like some of our, I don't usually show new vendors and other vendors in this, in the space, but these guys are building solutions to make it easier to do this. And I don't think YouAttest is necessarily a competitor, right? Like, talk a little bit about shameless promotion here, Garret, to really dig in about kind of like what you guys do and how you make some of these services better.
Yeah. Let me take it straight from a question on the chat right there. Right?
Awesome.
Security architects should review and validate user profiles inside of an app, but infrastructure and cybersec teams shouldn't be necessarily accountable for each and every software used by every department. Yes. I mean, first of all, let me speak in defense of the cyber team. I once worked the help desk. You know who I gave access to? To the people who yelled the most. Okay.
Right.
That's
it.
Much.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
As awful as that sounds, but yeah, you're going to really blame, a hack. I don't know what CEO just did on his 22-year-old that, give access. Fine. That's what governance is, y'all. That's what YouAttest is about. Mm-hmm. It's about helping you be the grown-up in a room and says, okay, this is what, has been granted, but I've reviewed, and this is what I removed the access. Mm-hmm. That's what we're focused on. YouAttest is giving that power back to the team, giving the power back to the whole equation, right? Yeah. I believe the actual cyber guy, the bit twiddler right there, should be the one doing IGA. No, I don't really. Now it can be, because in the smaller groups who would use this product, they can. They just put on their IGA hat, run our tool, and it helps them remove those roles. Yeah. Okay. But remember, it's not the IAM guy actually removing the roles. It's the managers. It's the first level managers out there removing the roles, telling the IAM manager this, and this should be removed. That's the IJ. And that's what we built at YouAttest, is the ability to not in the people who are, your people giving access and saying, this is this. No, to put the decisions out into the field that says these roles are wrong, remove these.
I love this because I am a huge XOps guy, and I don't know if you all have seen this term yet, but everything's ops now. FinOps, RevOps, SecOps, DevOps. This is ID ops, right? You're pushing the responsibility for identity down onto the groups that actually use it. And you're creating a better result for the end users and for security.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the ops people, it's like, hey, I did my job. They got access.
Right.
And to be blunt, guys, that's what IAM is a green light.
Mhm.
It's like, I gave you access. My job's done.
That's right.
Okay. Just happen to give access to someone who took control of that account 3 months ago and is talking to a C2C, but at least he has access and he won't be yelled at me.
Well, and if you're an MSP who has ever made the mistake of saying that you'll do end user review in your SBRs, you know the pain and what this could solve, right? So, did we review roles in the SBR this month? Oh no, we didn't get to it. Yeah, we didn't get to it. Well,
yeah, we didn't get to it. Yeah, someone created this spreadsheet on some group. Yeah, and I passed that around or so.
But now here's the thing: insurance carriers aren't going for that anymore. So if you're doing
a whole nother session, Jesse, love it.
Yeah.
Go.
So if you're saying that you're doing identity governance and you're actually doing RBAC, but you can't really prove it, that's starting to not be good enough. It used to be when somebody I know was filling out security insurance questionnaires, you could say that you were doing RBAC as long as you were using Active Directory. Well, that's not cutting it anymore. So you need some method to prove it. So yeah.
I've been on a call with my MSP channel manager, Charles Portnoy, who's on this. We've been on with 5 underwriters in the last couple of weeks, talking to them directly. Mm-hmm. Okay, what is your world now? What is it? And saying, yeah, well, we're going from the world of just saying, great, self-assessment, right? To show us the evidence. Mm-hmm. And it was a real good article. Look up Sophos, y'all, on cybersecurity. Basically, it did a review of enterprise of the insurance companies and said, what are you demanding? And there was something that said 60% and 62% were saying that we are basing giving cyber insurance on whether there's a real security practice going on and how much they're getting. Yeah. Okay. And that's a great point, Jesse. That's a change in the industry. Where it used to be self-assessment or whatever. Now the underwriters are saying, okay, let's take a look. What do you got? And where is your regular access review?
And I don't think you're going to get, that's not going to be your primary point. But Tim, it goes back to what I was talking about, is stacking value, right? So when you're talking about these things, there's not this primary, there is this primary value, and it's actually ops improvement, both for you and for the client, right? But the ancillary values, as you begin to stack those, it kind of becomes a thing. Well, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Now we need to just include this. And so as it becomes just included and recognized, just like computers used to not be included in everything, but they're recognized now, and security wasn't included in everything, but was recognized but not included. Now we're moving that out to the endpoint and to identity. And so we didn't talk about it as much, but the next thing in all of this is the enterprise browser. So that's the next thing. You're not even going to have to profile the device. You profile the browser. But that once you've got these things in place, you can start migrating to these new technologies very easily. So all of those things,
you're moving beyond the hardware. You're moving, upstream to, as you said, like how can we localize this? How can we reduce that attack surface area? Mm-hmm. As you said, like moving up to the browser. So I'm obviously a Google fan. Probably not many of the listeners are, but that architecture, right? Like it's been re-architected to make it safer with less attack surface area. So,
great. Love my Google. Remember, they were the first implementation of Zero Trust.
They were.
They did Beyond Corp or whatever. So they get the one thing I got out of Identiverse last week, Jesse, was the big players really are getting on board with identity. There was something being done by AWS, which I was impressed with. They had a panel of just pure geeks, and it was wonderful. It was just people on stage mumbling, which is my favorite audience. Okay, and they literally had 2 guys up there showing something called AWS CEDAR. Okay, and it's not AWS CEDAR, but it's CEDAR, it's CEDR, and it's a platform of how to. Remember, we were talking about you gave access at the authentication, right? Mm-hmm. Should you have access inside this application? Because he's doing this list, and basically it is a framework that we can pass identity trust scores and policies. Mm-hmm. Policies. So you were talking about, hey, I'll let them in, right?
Yeah.
But if they're in, Harbin, China at this time, I can't let them into this app
Right.
inside this part.
Right.
Right? Or if my policy is to look at what groups they pen in, and this one has got some triggers on this group because he just changed a result of escalation privilege, y'all. We shouldn't let them in.
Yeah.
That's where the world's going, y'all. It's going. Sure, we need. No one's saying we don't need two-factor. Sure, we have SASE, but once we get into the center, it can't be GUI inside.
Right.
That's where zero trust comes in.
Right.
We need identity and they have identity and scores of that being passed into the side of the application. Because it's one thing to look at the data, it's another thing to exfiltrate it. And this is stuff that I believe that the MSPs can lead on.
Yeah. And I think, exactly. And I think a great another way that we were able to move our clients into this, and this is even 2 years ago, I think you have better adoption now, but 2-3 years ago, is when it comes time for hardware replacements. That's the time to move from a CapEx to an OpEx model. Okay, well, you have 2 or 3 hardware replacements coming up. Well, you don't have to do that anymore, right? We're going to move all of our office or brick and mortar, even if we have it, to to coffee shop style internet, where everybody's got internet. Yeah, they can come into the office. Or we had one client offset the cost by getting rid of their downtown office. I mean, they were paying, five figures for this office every month, and they're like, "Oh, well, we can do this," and literally save $25,000 a month. So it was kind of a no-brainer for them at that point. So a lot of different things you can use, but I think you have to work with the individual client and what makes sense for them. But again, it's a business conversation and an ops conversation, not a sorry, Garrett, it's not a bunch of geeks mumbling on stage that's going to move with the clients.
Well, it's a big bang, right? Like,
sorry, just painting the picture, but it really.
Yeah. I've done my fair amount of mumbling today, so I think we're
there you go. Yeah, I'm guilty as charged. Great mumbler. Yes.
Garrett, talk a little bit more about how YouAttest works. So,
perfect.
Yeah, like
first of all, 100% cloud-based. Okay, multi-tenanted cloud-based. So what it's designed to do is to take advantage of the last 25 years of work of the IAMs. To be blunt, I think so. The best thing that's happened in cybersecurity has been the proliferation and the explosion of usage and functionality in the IAM space. Maybe I'm biased, but I do believe that is the best work in cyber in the last 25 years. I'm talking about the Oktas, the Ping Federates, the Jump Clouds, all that. Those are really advanced tools. Okay, so now we have all these identities consolidated. Now we even have device management consolidated in some of those products. Okay, all right. Why are the IGA tools still looking at them as basically as second-rate products where they have to reabsorb all the data? That's why MSPs don't really do IGA much, because they're like, I'm not taking on those legacy systems. I got to hire a $350,000 manager of this product. No, what YouAttest did, and then that's why it's very relevant to the MSPs, is said, you guys already managing this stuff. You're already managing your Azure AD. You're managing this stuff. Take our stuff, take a fractional FTE. We'll set it up for you if you need to, but it's just a SAML OIDC integration with the IAMs. And now you have something that literally no one who uses this product is trained in IT. They're trained in risk. Is able to run through the GUI and then go through it, conduct what Jesse said. Everyone just does the checkbox, the user access review, conduct this in a quantified manner through email and Slack messages, and then starts unlimited. You, the MSP, can do this. You're already managing the IAM. We have this plugin that goes straight into your IAM, and we've done already 2 million of these attestations. 2 million. That's a lot of reviews. That's a lot of roles removed. Okay. And it has a multi-tenanted interface for the MSP to say, okay, this customer has me connected to his AD. This customer has me connected to his Okta. This one has me connected to the AD and his AD, blah, blah, blah. And you manage it and you take this from. And so it's your customers love you because you're starting to provide more value than you ever did, and it adds stickiness because you're the ones who know how to do these reviews and manage it for them. And then it creates an attestation report that, one, says they did it, and two, they hand over to whoever. I don't care if it's an elementary school guy; they're in a HIPAA because they're holding PHI information.
We just had that.
But if they're finance,
we just had that with the Minneapolis school district got hit with a ransomware and exfil, and all the private counseling data for all the kids, some really sensitive stuff, which is medical, was leaked, and so then now it's out there forever for these poor kids. So
there you go. There you go.
How do you get the MSP to sell it, Garrett? I think that's always the question. We as a vendor, like I think that's where we're laser focused, right? It's like, is it obviously providing evidence, and evidence is great for insurance applications, and evidence, and it's great post breach, as you said, Jesse. Oh my God, we messed up. Like now what, right? Like they've always got an open mind. They've got an open checkbook after something like that happens. But talk about like regular, there's a lot of small businesses are loath to invest in cybersecurity. So kind of walk me through that narrative of like how you get the MSP to sell the small business.
That's great. I had this discussion at what was it, ConnectWise show, and a bunch of MSPs. MSPs are really good at devices. Let's just say that. You guys are killing it with XDR and MDR and all that, and I got a little clue of that. I worked at Silence for 4 years. Okay, the ones that are forward thinking in the identity space say, "Listen, I'll manage your identities. The MSP. Here's your costs." Right? I mean, every identity, one MSP was charging $135. Okay, every identity is this. What I'm giving you is I'm giving you provisioning. I'm giving you, basically PRAC-1, which is, access requests and reproval, right? Then what I'm doing is I'm giving you two-factor on that, right? Then I'm giving you SSO in that. I'm also giving you IGA. And we're that piece that gives you that review. And we are the MSP that is doing these access reviews periodically. It should be quarterly for all users, and then for admin accounts every month. And I think the best way to do it, and we at YouAttest, we're not charging up front. What we're doing is saying just the users that get reviewed, then a little ting goes off on our MSP console, and then voila, you get a bill at the end of the month and whatever that costs. And it's a fraction. It's a fraction of what the big guys are charging.
The big guys, you mean like, go ahead and talk about the big guys, Garrett, and then go ahead, Jesse. Sorry about that. Are you talking to like in terms of Okta or like some of the other?
No, I was talking about solutions. Azure and even Okta. They're charging right now for just the license. They're charging $9 per user.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And that's
more than multiple things in a stack, right? Like most items at on a vendor floor are 2 to 5, right? So yeah.
But IGA has so much immense value, right?
Well, I think it's hard to convey that. And Jesse, I might give you a crack at this because he does a great job convincing the MSP and putting the narrative in their head and like their 30-second elevator pitch that they can really sell. So Jesse, go ahead, maybe.
Let me dip into my bag here. No. So IGA, I think, is a great tool, and I've been talking about this a lot. So it may be some of the hammer seeing everything as a nail, but if you're looking to kind of move into a mid-market space with clients that have that are consuming more services and are more sophisticated, and especially regulatory clients, this is just needed. So it allows you to be a thought leader by talking IGA, especially if you're in a co-managed situation where you're talking with an IT manager and that's maybe your contact, to be able to bring them the term IGA and start to explain it to them and have them start thinking about, hey, yeah, we're doing all these things, but is it really effective? Because effectively, if you're not using IGA properly and you don't have role-based access control that's actually controlling something, you're in essence gutting all of your other security controls that depend on that role-based access control to allow access. So,
yeah, that's well described, right? In terms of how important it is on the list of where you start, right? And we go down CIS controls, and it's right there at like free. Garret probably knows how his product maps back to controls better, but
well, I've got all those spelled out, all the controls.
3, 4, 5, 6. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I'll just tell you
1, 4,
too.
6.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you too. I mean, this is something for MSPs just in general that they should be doing. And when I was the CISO for the MSP that I was at last, or I was not everyone's favorite person when it came time for our monthly account review. And let me tell you, I forced monthly account review manually on all of our critical systems because it's that important, right? But if I could have pressed a button and gotten those results back from everything, I would have been probably more popular around the water cooler.
But that's literally, this product has made the GRC people not the people that people avoid and look away from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's security. Yep. Right. All good.
Yeah, governance, risk, and compliance. I don't think it's anyone's dream job, but someone's got to do it, right, Jesse?
Yeah.
Tim, can I show one slide?
Absolutely.
Okay, here. This is
button.
it. There you go. And I once upon a time knew how to use computers. Let me see what it says. How to do. Yeah. Oh God, I've never used this tool. There we go. There's going to be.
Jesse, and I think that's just it's a battle that's not going to go away, right? Like you're gonna constantly be that unlike, disliked, go away, I don't want to hear from you, right? Like you make my life more frictionless, right? Like, so how do you, I think it's an ongoing conversation, right? Like every week we talk about this, like how do you get less hated?
Yeah, I mean, on a personal note or on a EQ or empathy note, I kind of take it as a challenge because people are immediately going to recoil a little bit when you ask them to do something from a security perspective. But it's kind of fun to see if you can get them on your side. See if you can get them laughing, see if you can get them talking. Have fun with it. Be curious. It's about unlocking what makes that person tick. And if you can do that and kind of connect with someone, you're going to have good success. Now, to pragmatically for IGA, again, it goes back to when you're working with larger clients, what leadership wants is for you to offload risk and offload process from their plate. So if you can compartmentalize a piece of risk and you can package that and deliver it effectively for them, you're going to be their friend. And this is just one other way to do that through a service-based model.
Awesome.
Wow, Jesse, I was at the IIA Institute of Internal Auditors last year. The keynote speaker, the president of IIA, said if he could do anything over again in his job is have more empathy.
Yeah, that's true.
Always.
To his employees. So can you all see my screen, or am I sharing a lot or whatever?
You are sharing. You're looking at what we're looking at, Garret.
Okay. Rock and roll. So
I
this
see,
is what you
a bunch of arrows and boxes.
Yes, and I'm a big fan of John Madden. Rest in peace. Okay, so here is what you already have. This is your MSP, and you got a wonderful guy who knows how to twiddle the bits on Okta or Azure AD or etc. Wonderful. That's a great start, and that's really all you need to get started. What we did is, because we're real good at SSO, built an IAM, all that stuff. We do a SAML OIDC connection. It takes you a couple of minutes. We usually walk you through. And now you're pulling all the entitlements. That's the most important word in identity and identity compliance security. What are the entitlements? Users, role, groups, privileges. Then you say, but Garret, I'm an MSP for healthcare. I'm an MSP for finance. They haven't synced everything up. Yeah, of course they haven't. So we also take these in via APIs or CSVs. We got one customer who does a 65 megabytes of roles and entitlements through CSVs. Okay, 2023, guys, this is the world. Someone has the role or puts on the hat of risk manager. This is you. This is y'all. This is the MSP. You say, I'm the adult in a room. This person's wonderful. We've been adding and giving you privileges, all that. I'm the adult in the room. I'm the MSP that cares. I'm the MSP that differentiates. I'm going to run regular access reviews. They go to their YouAttest console, and the product figures out who is the application managers, who is the user managers. This person has 9 reports. This person has 2. This one has 3. This one has 2. YouAttest figures it out, sends out either Slack or emails to them and said, this is what you need to do. And those people, they can certify the role, They can even revoke the role, or they can redelegate it out and go, I don't know. Bob knows that. Jane knows that. Sammy knows that. Rock and roll. That's what the product does. And for your hardcore cases, we can do this 4 times, 4 levels of certifications. The result of this is a better identity set. For what? Well, like Jesse said, it could be for your applications, or it could be for your CASB. It could be for your application firewall. It could be your SASE components. Either way, the roles and the users have been reviewed, and your entity is more secure. And what's really relevant is you've created this artifact. Okay, this artifact being evidence. That's what
Garret,
they call it.
how often?
Okay, this is what they're saying now. So there's a auditor I love it over CDW. It gives me a guidance in this. They're saying your users really should be reviewed every quarter, and your admins every month.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
And how are you going to do that without automation? Right?
So I just
not gonna
asked.
happen.
Yeah.
Well, you could say that you do it. No, I just asked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's probably what you're doing.
We got a couple minutes left. Let's wrap it up. Final thoughts, Jesse. I think, as you said, without automation, it's probably not going to happen. But I think you had some great advice.
Yeah, I think this is about ops savings, and then also going after co-managed mid-market clients who want to offload risk and do something effective. And if you can come in and give them a win here, oh my goodness, you're going to be their best friend. I just quickly typed into ChatGPT while you guys were talking what regulatory frameworks specifically require regular account review. And we have ISO 27001, Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, PCI DSS, GDPR, and FISMA. And I'm guessing CMMC, I think, too. That although
CMMC, 100%. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a good way, if you have clients that have those frameworks, to start talking IGA with them and saying, hey, are we really doing this? And do we want to be caught with our head in the sand when an incident happens? So those could be some ways to take it to market.
Awesome. Garret, final thoughts.
We've done 2 million of these. We're ready for you. Okay, that's it. What everything Jesse just said is, listen, you're being required. Okay, and you can be the leader. That's what literally. So I want to put up in the stop. Look up the Stop Ransomware Guard. It's telling you if you're going to lead your clients and do the best practices, they need to practice this thing called principal of least privilege. They need to remove these excess privileges and the ghost accounts to the fight dwell times and make the identity store clean for security.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you're not taking a zero trust approach and you're using these tools to implement that zero trust approach, right? Like automation, some of the vendors we showed on here that are all new in the last 4 years, right? Like this is a dramatic change in the IT provider space. Jesse made some great points, some great takeaways, like switching to BYO can save a lot of money on capital costs, right? Moving this like physical hardware costs. I think you probably heard this term, offline to online, right? Like you're basically shifting those costs. So some great points here, Garret. Like as I said, your product maps extremely high on CAS controls. We're all about that. Jesse, we'll continue this conversation on these tough conversations, right? Like with the client they're not easy, right? Like you're the frictionless one. You're the one in the way. So, some great takeaways here today. But next week I have to check. I think we're talking with Sention and configurations again. But excited to join again. Team Tim, we're missing Tim Golden. I'm sure he'll be back next week. But Jesse, Garret, thanks again for coming on, and a lot of education, So we'll talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend, everybody.